Hello, beautiful humans. I realize it is a little late tonight. It is Wednesday, January 29th. It's 10 o'clock Central Time. And I realize that for most of you, this is way later than I usually come on here. However, I have a little bit of breaking news that I'm going to summarize for you, as you can see by the thumbnail and the title and the description, that Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke have been sued again by one of their former clients in the ConneXions, what is it called? ConneXions classroom. So I have barely just received the full lawsuit a little bit ago, and I have not read the entire lawsuit, nor have I investigated the veracity of these claims, nor have I dug into the allegations that the ConneXions classroom is still functional and that there are people still running it. So I still have a lot of research to do. But before I do all of that research, I just wanted to make sure and get on here and tell you the breaking news, and then let you know that I'm going to continue to look into these allegations and see how credible they are and continue to report on them. As many of you know, I went on Mormon Stories on January 10th, Friday, January 10th, and myself, Lauren Matthias, Mindy Caldwell, and John DeLynn of Mormon Stories reported on the memoir that Sherry Franke recently published called The House of My Mother. I have it next to me because I've been doing a lot of reading and research into the things that Sherry talks about in this book. One of the things that she talks about is the ConneXions classroom that Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke were working on together. The interesting thing to me is that if you go to Spotify right now, you can download over 250 episodes of the ConneXions classroom that feature Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. Why, at this point, has Spotify not taken those episodes down? Why are they still available for download? So in the book, The House of My Mother, if you've watched the Mormon Stories episode, you know that Sherry Franke at one point watched the Netflix documentary, The Sins of Our Mother, and she compared Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow to Jodi and Ruby. And this is the reason why I have continued to keep this book right here on my desk next to me, because I'm preparing to do some episodes where I draw some parallels between Ruby Franke and Lori Vallow. There are a lot of them. As I've been doing this deep dive, researching, reading, also trying to keep up with my other podcasting obligations, my coaching obligations, my e-course on helping people to identify and defend against manipulation and control. I've been doing a lot of work. So in between all of the other obligations that I have, I've been doing some deep dives into investigating Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt and their connections to the Lori Vallow Daybell case. So I've been preparing an episode specifically on comparing Ruby and Lori and their similarities. I'm getting ready. Don't worry, guys. It's coming just within the next couple of days. Give me some time. But while I was preparing this episode, I was doing some research and some reading different articles and things like that. A news article popped up in Rolling Stone magazine, which I subscribe to. And it was an announcement that Jodi Hildebrandt has been sued again by one of her former clients. And in this lawsuit is named Jodi Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke, and others who are running the ConneXions classroom, as well as this person's ex-wife. So I want to put a disclaimer out, first of all. I have not investigated these allegations. I don't know if they're spurious or if they're factual. I've not investigated the person who filed the lawsuit. I've not investigated their marriage. I've not investigated anything related to whether this person is credible or not. I also have not investigated his allegations that the ConneXions classroom is still up and running. However, I did go to Spotify, I did see that the entire ConneXions classroom playlist is totally available, and I've downloaded probably at least 20 episodes at this point, just because some of them seem to be pretty harmful. So I want to listen to them, and I want to see. I want to understand exactly what it was that they were teaching, and I want to unpack some of those things. So trace on the case. Sorry, you guys, please bear with me. It's late at night. I'm tired. It's been a long day. I'm not going to see every single comment that comes up, but please call attention to your questions so that I'm just a visual person. And just at this moment, the latest comment was trace on the case. That woman who had the older two girls at the time of the arrest. So what I'm talking about right now is Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. They were both arrested in Ivins, Utah, when two of Ruby's minor children were found to have been emaciated and abused. And they're both in jail now. They're serving time for this crime. They've already been convicted. They both pled guilty. They've been convicted. They're serving time. So I'm not sure, trace on the case who you're talking about when you say the woman who had the older two girls at the time of the arrest. That was, I think, a friend of the family, a friend of Sherry Franke, who was helping to take care of some of the older kids. So just looking through comments. Thank you guys for the compliments about the Mormon Stories episode. I think it was a great episode. I think it was a good in-depth look at Sherry's book, her memoir, and trying to tie together all of the things between Ruby and Jodi and Lori, and the similarities between the case, because Sherry does mention Lori Vallow and that documentary in her book. So hi there, Terry from Montana. I miss Montana. I want to go back there. Having nostalgic feelings about that right now. I'm glad you got a notification. Thank you. Good. Thank you for reporting that, because people have been having problems with that lately. Okay, Pam Botcher. Let's discuss just briefly. I haven't done a deep dive into Pam Botcher yet, but Pam Botcher was, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that she was a colleague of Jodi Hildebrandt. And okay, she's named in Sherry's book. She had the older girls, but I don't think she's named in this lawsuit. So so here's what I'm going to do tonight. Okay. This is just a really quick and dirty overview of this most recent lawsuit that's been filed against Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. I have the lawsuit. I have not read the entire thing yet. And as I said, I have not done a deep dive into the person who is making the accusations, who filed the lawsuit. I have not investigated any of the allegations. And so all of this is just alleged. So tonight, all I want to do is give a brief overview, highlights of what the actual lawsuit states. We're going to review the Rolling Stone article, and then I'm going to continue to do research and reading and find out if these allegations are credible and whether or not ConneXions is still viable, whether they're still functioning. I'm going to listen to more podcast episodes, do some more research, and then I'll come back and have a more comprehensive report at a later time. But when I saw this article, this lawsuit was just filed on January 22nd. Rolling Stone literally published this article today. I got a notification just a couple of hours ago. So I'm just coming to you to give you this information as I have it right now, completely raw. Haven't done the proper investigation. As you guys know, I like to do the deep dives. I like to bring the receipts. I like to have all of my ducks in a row. I'm not there yet, but I just want you to know that this is out there, and then I'm going to do my research and come back at a later time and solidify everything. So yes, thank you, Margarita. This is my whole point. Visions of Glory is still a book that's out there. It's still a book that some people like. They think it's great. It's a wonderful book. I think it's very, very harmful. My point with this entire episode right now of giving you this update is, if ConneXions classroom still exists on any level whatsoever, it needs to be dismantled, because the things that Jodi Hildebrandt was teaching are abusive. Obviously, she's been convicted and is serving jail time for child abuse. And we're going to get into why this lawsuit is relevant to those allegations right now. So I just want to say, again, I haven't read the entire thing. I just have read a couple of summaries, a couple of different news articles. So I'm just going to give you a summary of what the lawsuit is and what it alleges at this moment. So the name of the person who has brought this lawsuit into the Utah Federal District Court is Robert Tilleman. He has filed this lawsuit against Ruby, Jodi, and their entire company, the ConneXions Classroom. The lawsuit claims that Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt participated in electronic fraud and encouraged abusive practices among their clients. So here are some of the just key takeaways at a very surface level. First of all, business fraud and encouragement of abuse. Robert Tilleman alleges that Hildebrandt and Franke breached federal laws with their business practices. They're accused of promoting a methodology that encouraged child abuse among their clients, which was part of a larger scheme that damaged hundreds of families over nearly 2 decades. So if you have watched the episode that I did on Mormon Stories, if you've followed this case at all, you know that Jodi Hildebrandt has a pattern of separating a husband and wife from each other, convincing the husband that he is an abuser and a pedophile and an addict, and convincing the wife that the husband needs extensive healing. Then she will convince them that there needs to be a 6-month separation with no affection, no touching, no nothing. And during that time, if the man slips up or has any kind of a problem whatsoever, then Jodi encourages the wife to invite the husband to leave the home, separating the husband and wife from each other and convincing the man that he has a problem. And she's done this over and over. This is a pattern of behavior that she has. And this lawsuit is basically suing Jodi over those practices because this man is alleging that he's been separated from his children for no good reason, that he's not guilty of the things that his wife accused him of. I believe that the wife now has remarried. I, again, have not done anything but surface level research on this. So I'm going to dig into all of this and make sure that I have all my facts straight. So all of this is just allegedly at this point. This whole episode should be called allegedly. So Margarita says, Jodi and Vision's subject Spencer were in the same psychology org and both work with children. Yeah, so Jodi Hildebrandt and Tom Harrison were holding these ConneXions conferences together where they were trying to teach people all of these principles. They had their own language. They had their own in-speak. It had all of the markers of a coercive control cult where Jodi was profiting and benefiting off of manipulating and controlling people into believing her narrative. So Kimberly Hughes, I'm not sure which guy you're saying did a Mormon Stories. Is it the guy who brought the lawsuit? That would be really interesting. There was a Mormon Stories episode with a man named Adam Paul Steed, who was a former client of Jodi Hildebrandt. That episode was taken down because attorneys representing his former wife threatened the Open Stories Foundation with a lawsuit. So the Mormon Stories podcast took their interview off of the internet of Adam Paul Steed. Hidden True Crime did an episode with Adam Paul Steed also. Their episode is still up. And so I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I just want to clear all of that up. Adam Paul Steed was a client of Jodi Hildebrandt's. He alleges basically the same things. But as far as I know, he has not brought a lawsuit against Jodi Hildebrandt. So I didn't know. The same guy. Okay, so Kimberly says the same guy that is suing did a Mormon Stories podcast. Oh my gosh, you guys, really? You would think that my very basic preliminary research would have brought that up. Give me 1 second. I'm going to look at this. I just got to make sure I'm looking at the right account because one of my accounts has ads and I don't want that one. I'm looking, you guys. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm looking and I cannot find a Mormon Stories episode with Robert Tilleman. Give me 1 second. 1 second, you guys. Oh, goodness. Okay. So I just want to clarify. Okay. Robert Tilleman is the man who is bringing this lawsuit against Jodi Hildebrandt. As far as I know, he has not done a Mormon Stories episode. There is a former client of Jodi Hildebrandt's who did do a Mormon Stories episode. That was Adam Paul Steed. His episode has been taken down due to a threat of legal action against the Open Stories Foundation. Somebody reposted it, the Mormon Stories episode. So it's up there. You can go find it. Also, Lauren Matthias from Hidden True Crime did an interview with Adam Paul Steed. Her episode with Adam Paul Steed is still available on Hidden True Crime because they haven't been threatened with anything. So I just want you to know, I don't want you to confuse this lawsuit with the Adam Paul Steed interview. Adam Paul Steed, as far as I know, has not brought a lawsuit against Jodi Hildebrandt. This is a separate lawsuit. It's an additional lawsuit. This is not the first time that Jodi has been sued. Kevin Franke actually sued Jodi Hildebrandt. And I don't know what the status of that is yet. So I still have a lot of research to do on this case. So I just want to make sure that you guys know. If anybody has a link to the Robert Tilleman interview on Mormon Stories, I would love to have it. Because my preliminary research, I did not see a Robert Tilleman episode on Mormon Stories podcast. If it's there, please let me know. I really do want to know. Okay. Yeah, you're totally right, McSpunky. She is a man-hater. Yeah, so I want to get this information out there. Okay, let me just clarify. Okay, I'm looking at two different documents. I want to make sure that I have the correct resources. Again, I'm bringing this to you before I've done the proper deep dive. Okay, so I'm looking at the federal lawsuit filing right now in front of me. Michael Robert Tilleman, plaintiff, versus Jodi Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke, ConneXions Classroom LLC, Michael Washburn, and Does I-X. I don't even know what that is yet because I haven't looked into it. So those of you who are saying, complainant Michael Tilleman, not Robert, it is Michael Robert Tilleman. All three names. Okay. I just want to make sure that we get all of this out there. So if there is an episode with Michael Robert Tilleman, please let me know on Mormon Stories, because I did a little bit of looking things up over the last couple of hours since I found this episode, and I could not find an episode. And maybe I need to shoot. I've got too many windows open as always. I could not find one with a Michael Robert Tilleman, but if you have one, if you know where one is, I would love to see it. And And also, I just have to say, guys, I've been texting with John DeLynn today. We've been talking about whether or not to cover this and to do an episode all together. So I don't want to, spill the beans too much, but I just want to let you know I've been in contact with John DeLynn, and I think if he had done an episode with Robert Tilleman, he would have let the group know. Okay, I'm just gonna say there's a group chat between it's the band. It's the group chat with the band. Lauren Matthias, Mindy Caldwell, John DeLynn, and me. We talk about all of these cases as often as anything comes up. And we've been talking about whether or not to do an episode on this lawsuit just today, within the last few hours. And there's no mention in there of an episode on Mormon Stories of Michael Robert Tilleman. So if somebody has seen it, if you have it, please, please, please link to it. So I'm just going to go back to, I'm going to read the summary of the case and the allegations. So as I said, there's an allegation of business fraud and encouragement of abuse where Tilleman alleges that Hildebrandt and Franke breached federal laws with their business practices. They're accused of promoting a methodology that encouraged child abuse among their clients, which is part of a larger scheme that damaged hundreds of families over nearly 2 decades. So we know that Jodi has this pattern of separating the man and the wife, of accusing the man of addiction and affairs and whatever else, and then having the woman invite the man to leave. And this is the reason why Kevin Franke was separated from his wife and family for over a year when they were arrested. He's done, I should say, Jodi has done this over and over. This is her MO. This is how she operates her practice. This is what she advises couples to do. So it doesn't surprise me that this person is alleging that this has happened to hundreds of couples. And allegedly, this happened to him and his family. He was separated from his children and under the same type of allegations. So basically, he's saying that his ex-wife implemented Jodi's teachings, which endangered their daughter, leading to physical injuries like sunburns and signs of dehydration, which he now believes might have stemmed from abuse. And as we've seen, the treatment of the children, that when Jodi and Ruby were arrested, and we saw what the children had gone through, and having also witnessed Jesse Hildebrandt and what they went through when they were subjected to Jodi's abuse, this is right on par. If your kid comes back to you after time with their other parent, and they have unexplained sunburns, unexplained dehydration, unexplained, emaciation, they haven't been fed properly, it's definitely possible that that was a child abuse situation. So this is what he is alleging happened. He says, now that I'm putting this together, now I really think it could have been child abuse and not just an unexplained sunburn. So going back to the summary of the lawsuit, by the way, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for liking the episode. Please share it with people who need to have this information. I really appreciate your support, and thanks for just being here with me. All of you who show up over and over, time and time again, I really appreciate it. So going back to the summary of this lawsuit, Robert Tilleman, so Michael Robert Tilleman, paid for some of ConneXions' services at his wife's behest, only to later realize the harmful nature of the teachings. And then he goes into the financial exploitation. The lawsuit details how ConneXions was designed to brainwash individuals into buying expensive services, and he says between $5,000 and $15,000 for leadership training programs and $84 a month for subscriptions that would ultimately cause them pain, thereby bringing them under the company's financial and psychological control. So if you can imagine going into what you think is a therapeutic setting where you think that you're going to get marriage counseling of some kind, and it costs thousands of dollars. And then Jodi tells you, okay, if you're the man and you have a problem, then you're going to have to separate from your wife, spend 6 months apart from her. And then if that doesn't work out and you don't heal yourself, then you're going to have to re-up for more therapy, spend more thousands of dollars to try and repair the relationship. So she really has these people over a barrel, and it can be kind of seen as extortion. I think this is what this lawsuit is alleging. So then he actually accuses Ruby and Jodi of racketeering, which is basically an organized crime situation where you have a system in place to defraud people out of thousands of dollars or more. He says he accuses the pair of engaging in racketeering enterprise by advertising and selling fraudulent services and encouraging others to perpetrate illegal and harmful acts, including child abuse and psychological abuse. So I think what he's referring to here is this business model that Jodi designed, where she set up this ConneXions classroom. She is teaching all of these different ideas about how to deal with children, how to deal with, excuse me, how to deal with spouses and conflicts in primary relationships. And then she is training some of these wives to go on and become representatives of the ConneXions classroom, to become coaches. And excuse me one second. She's setting these people up to be coaches, to teach the same things that she's teaching. But here's the caveat. She's asking these coaches not only to pay a fee to be trained, excuse me, but also she's asking for a percentage of their revenue in perpetuity, which means that forever, as long as they're coaches teaching what she has taught them, she gets a cut. Excuse me, sorry guys. Sorry, allergies are so bad right now. Okay. So I'm going to go back and look at some comments right now, because I know some of you know more things about this case than I do. And again, I've only done some really surface level research on this. So I appreciate you guys educating me in the places where I'm not quite as educated as I should be. Yes. Jesse is a superstar. Yeah. Okay, so Tibbets. This is not a person that I know of yet, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and look. Give me one second, you guys. Okay, yes. I remember seeing this as well. So again, this is a Mormon Stories episode with Brian Tibbets. This is not the person who has brought the lawsuit, but I'm going to put this in the chat here. This is another person who has been harmed by Jodi Hildebrandt's quote unquote therapy. So thank you for sharing that. There is going to be a documentary on Hulu in February, at the end of February, with, I believe, Sherry, Chad, and Kevin Franke, as far as I know. Oh, Martha, thank you for this. Your content helps keep me sane. You look at craziness in life, the world, and continue your message of love and hope. We need more channels and people like you in this world. I appreciate that. No matter how crazy it gets, I'm always going to try to focus on the good and what we can do to make the world better. So yeah, it's exactly the same thing that happened to Adam Steed. And this lawsuit is alleging that it's happened to hundreds of people. Thanks, Michelle. I don't mind or care that it isn't fully researched. This is organic and gets me excited to learn more. Look forward to this unfolding. I literally saw the Rolling Stones article drop just a few hours ago. And as soon as it dropped, I immediately went and tried to get access to the lawsuit. But my accounts as they are right now. I don't have official media credentials, and so there are some things I can't get access to. And I was literally making a thumbnail for this episode when John DeLynn texted me and sent me the entire lawsuit. So I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I will, and I will update you guys after I've completely dug through everything and done all my deep dive rabbit hole stuff. So Margarita says, this is what scares me about their organization. If Tom Harrison was Jodi's mentor, was he teaching that? He has a calling in the church. He was a CSA therapist. Terrifying. Yeah. Tom Harrison is the root of a lot of these horrible teachings. Tom Harrison and Jodi Hildebrandt appeared together on panels and at conferences to give continuing education to Utah therapists. And Tom Harrison does have a calling in the missionary services department, where he is the one who gets to determine whether a missionary is mentally healthy enough to lead whether or not a missionary is mentally healthy enough to leave the country and go on a foreign service mission. So it's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, and I agree with you. It sounds more and more like the way Melanie B and Brandon relationship blew up at the end. Crazy accusations. Yeah, it was basically Lori feeding Melanie things that probably weren't even true, and basically trying to, divide a couple for the purposes of isolating Melanie, turning her against her husband, and then eventually justifying demonic possession, possibly unaliving, and collection of life insurance policies. So Smiling Jack's 83 to Megan, you need to be kinder. I'm sorry. I don't know if I've been unkind. If I have, please let me know how. I always want to do better. Megan, you need to be kinder. I'm not sure if that was a typo or, oh, okay. Smiling Jack, you need to be kinder to yourself, Megan. I am trying, that's always a practice, right? I'm always trying to be kinder to myself. I just want to give disclaimers, because normally when I do an episode like this, I have already done all the research. I've already done the deep dive. I've already tried to investigate everything I can. And this time I have not done that yet. So I just want people to know these are all so far allegations. It's not that I'm being unkind to myself. I just haven't had the time to do it yet, and I will, just not yet. So I just wanted you to know that I'm coming out with this unresearched on my part, just very, very surface level research. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. I really appreciate you being here and just joining in this discussion and helping to educate me and helping to educate the community. The reason I do episodes like this is because if there are people out there who are still being harmed by these teachings and by these practices, I definitely want to call attention to it. And I believe that there are. This lawsuit is, to me, proof of that there are still people out there who are being harmed by these ridiculous teachings. And I just want to call attention to it and make sure that people understand that not to necessarily take things just at face value. We really have to do our own investigation and research, and we really need to be careful about what we consume. So, Church of Korihor, good to see you. Thank you so much. Just reading comments to make sure I don't miss any questions. Yeah, so there is a movement, Church of Korihor. Thank you for pointing this out. Fight the New Drug is it's kind of a Utah-based, I guess, nonprofit where they go into schools and they try to teach kids about resisting the urge to look at pornography and resisting pornography addiction. And I think it is an overhyped, overblown sort of, I think they've made it into a bigger problem than it needs to be. It is a perfectly normative, healthy, human developmental function to be curious about the way that bodies look and to be curious about sexuality. And so I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with viewing ethically sourced pornography. in a healthy developmental way, but it needs to be part of a larger discussion about sexuality, especially among teenagers. And, you know, healthy relationships include a lot of communication about these kinds of things. And I think that the typical Mormon response to that is just, no, it's bad. Never, never, never. Don't ever, 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 ever do that under any circumstances. And anytime we engage in that kind of black and white thinking, it's just not healthy. So I just want to call attention to that. I don't think that Fight the New Drug is necessarily a very healthy organization. But again, I don't know what I don't know. I haven't researched it entirely. So it's possible that I could be wrong. Trace on the Case, thanks for supporting Church of Horror. Anybody who wants a wonderful secular gathering of thought and progress and meditative thinking, self-love, I recommend the Church of Horror on Sunday mornings. We did an episode a couple of days ago that I thought was great, and I really appreciated everything that Exmojo had to contribute, and it was a great time. So please go look it up. Yeah, thanks, you guys. Terry says, I agree with you, Megan, about Melanie's. I don't understand why all the broken marriages for other men. I really feel bad for the first husbands talking about being blindsided. Yeah, when you get into a therapeutic situation where your therapist is not a healthy person and they're basically a man hater, pretty much guaranteed that your relationship is not going to go well. So you do have to be really careful when you're seeking out therapeutic help, whether it's for yourself or your relationship. I used to have a free how to hire a therapist guide on my website. It's under construction right now, so it's not there right now. But if you need help finding a therapist, I do have that guide available. Please email me at askmegan@gmail.com. It's with 2 E's, askmegan with 2 E's at gmail.com. I'll be happy to share it with you. It is a list of questions that one of my therapists gave to me to basically say, at some point, you should not need your therapist anymore. And when you're hiring a therapist for the job of caring for your mental health, there is a long list of questions that you should ask them to make sure that they're competent. I think that's really important. So, yeah. So Michelle says the way you started explaining Jodi's business plan, pay for coaching, teach the belief, and then she gets a piece of the action sounds borderline MLM. It absolutely 100% is an MLM type of model where Jodi says, like, I'm going to teach you how to do this. You're going to start your own business. But when you start your own business, you're going to give me a cut of everything that you earn because you owe me. I taught you. It's very, very, very MLM-y. So, okay, let's go on and finish the basically summary of this lawsuit. So we talked about business fraud. We talked about the impact on this guy who filed the lawsuit, the financial exploitation. So the lawsuit details how ConneXions was designed to brainwash individuals into buying expensive services between $5,000 and $15,000 for leadership training programs, $84 a month for subscriptions that would ultimately cause them pain, thereby bringing them under the company's financial and psychological control. We went over that. So racketeering and fraud. Robert Tilleman accuses the pair of engaging in racketeering enterprise by advertising and selling fraudulent services and encouraging others to perpetrate illegal and harmful acts, including child abuse and psychological abuse. So basically what we were just talking about, taking Jodi's worldview and teaching it to other coaches and then packaging that and reselling it. And that basically is the definition of racketeering, which is, if you think of organized crime, where a group of people gets together and they are purposely trying to defraud individuals out of money, basically, and get financial gain for themselves. When it is organized like that in a group of people who are systematically or what's the right word? Sorry, my medicine is gone, so my brain doesn't always pick good words. but they're organized into a group, and they're going out and targeting certain individuals and trying to get financial gain in a very systematic way. That's racketeering. That's one of the charges that they got Al Capone on, I think, mail fraud and racketeering. Anyway, the ongoing concern is that his daughter, his former spouse, has custody of his daughter, and he's noticed some of these signs of abuse. Previously, he sort of explained it away, or his former spouse explained it away by saying it's not a big deal, she got a sunburn. But now he's thinking about all these things in a new light. Now that he's seen Jodi and Ruby be arrested, now that he's seen more information come out about ConneXions, and he's now looking at the sunburn and saying, well, what if they decided to punish my daughter and just left her out in the sun for a long time to do work, which are things that Jodi Hildebrandt and other people have detailed as part of the system that Jodi put into place. So that's what he's concerned about. He notes that his ex-wife continues to follow Jodi's teachings even after they've been convicted of child abuse, which to me is really incredibly problematic. If you are following a system of beliefs and you've sort of modeled your life after this, you've made some behavioral changes to follow a particular set of teachings, and then you find out that the person who taught you those things went to jail for child abuse, would you not look at those teachings and say, maybe these aren't the healthiest things. Maybe I should not be incorporating these practices into my parenting. Why in the world would you continue to practice those things after you found out that the person who taught them to you went to jail for child abuse? I just don't understand that intellectual disconnect. For example, if I have a lot of coaching clients. I love coaching. It's one of my favorite things. I love listening to your stories. I love hearing all of the things that are going on in your lives. I love celebrating your victories with you. It's one of my very favorite things, connecting on that individual level. If I were to be arrested and charged with fraud or charged with abuse of some kind, I would certainly hope that the people that I was coaching were like, oh, well, not doing that anymore. Like, throw away all your notebooks, throw away all of the ideas that I gave you, right? Don't do the things that I said to do anymore. If I get arrested and charged with fraud, then you have to call into question everything that I've told you, please, right? So I'm very confused about why it is that people who listened to the ConneXions Classroom podcast continue to practice those things even after Ruby and Jodi pled guilty to child abuse. It's not just that they were arrested and charged and believed they were wrongly accused. They both pled guilty to those charges. Why in the world would you continue to implement those parenting techniques after? I just don't get it. Sorry. And that's the thing too, Smiling Jack's 83. I didn't realize this crap was still being followed. Yeah, apparently there are still people out there who listen to the ConneXions podcast on Spotify and think of it as, oh, hey, these two gals, they seem like they're pretty smart and faithful members of the LDS Church. So I'm gonna follow their parenting advice and learn their new vocabulary and perpetuate these beliefs onto my children. Don't understand. So yes, some of it can be explained by Stockholm Syndrome. That's a very astute observation. Some of it can be explained by Stockholm Syndrome. Some of it can be explained by brainwashing. Sure. But here's a good point. When you're in an MLM and you're selling skincare products, or I don't know, Tahitian noni juice, for example. Don't get me started. They don't really hurt you, right? At the very worst, you're getting some overpriced healthcare products. You're getting some supplements that might do you some good, but probably aren't worth the overexorbitant price, right? you're trying to support a friend probably, or something like that. But Jodi Hildebrandt almost killed 2 kids. Can we just full stop at that point? Can we just look at that and say what she did to those kids? It's amazing that they're alive. And not only that, but they're going to have years and years and years of unpacking, of therapy, of deprogramming to do. And as someone who was brainwashed from the ages of 7 to 11, I can tell you there are still echoes today that I still deal with. There are still times where I have to second guess and check myself because that programming was instilled at me at such a young age before my frontal lobe was completely formed. I still believe some of those things a little bit, to the point where, not where I have unhealthy behaviors that are unconscious, but sometimes a situation arises and my very first thought defaults to that programming. Now I've gotten aware enough and I've processed through enough of it that I can say, that was part of my unhealthy programming and I need to dismiss that thought. But the thought's still there. It's still the first thing that comes out at the age of 50. Can you imagine the future that these kids have ahead of them of learning to unlearn everything that they were taught, that they were demonic, that they were evil? My heart just breaks for these children. And the fact that she was supported by the LDS Church and that bishops referred people to her and recommended people to her. And even Ruby Franke, when she was reaching out to a friend for help for her wayward son, who actually wasn't wayward, they highly recommended this person, came to her recommended as somebody with a high level of integrity, somebody who is smart and faithful. God, it just blows my mind. And yes, Terry, you're right. The church was paying for the therapy for Jodi. People would go to their bishop and they would say, I'm having trouble in my marriage. I don't know what to do. The bishop would say, here's a referral to a competent therapist. I will pay for it. And he would send that couple off to therapy with Jodi Hildebrandt. He would pay the bill. He would pay Jodi's exorbitant fees. And then the couple were the ones who had to suffer the consequences of those teachings. And to this date, as far as I know, the LDS Church has not apologized for supporting her, has not dialed it back and said, oh, you guys shouldn't go to ConneXions anymore, has not ever denounced Jodi Hildebrandt publicly. And so there probably are still a lot of people out there who believe the things that she's taught, listen to the ConneXions podcast and think, oh, she's LDS. She's supported by the church. I should listen to what she says. Which is why we're talking about this right now. And the sad thing is that the LDS Church has so much money and so much power and so many attorneys on their side that even if somebody brings a lawsuit against the church and says, hey, I reached out to my bishop for help, for therapeutic support. He referred me to a sadist and it ended up ending my marriage and I got separated from my kids and lost everything. The LDS Church is like, well, that's not our fault. We didn't know that she was teaching harmful things and you chose to follow them. So that's not our fault. Those are the arguments that corporation is going to make. This is a good question. I don't know if the Spotify episodes are generating revenue for someone, but I suspect they probably are, because if they're still up on Spotify, that Spotify account points to some kind of monetization, and that monetization is probably still going into whatever LLC that Ruby and Jodi set up, and is probably still getting deposited into a bank account somewhere, even though they're in prison. I'm sure they've got financial protections in place to make sure that their revenue continues to roll, right, while they're in prison. Always follow the money. Unfortunately, Rando, Alcatraz is closed. It is now a national park. I've been there. It's a lovely place to visit. Very interesting, but not a prison anymore. But I wish there was a place like that for people like this. And this is part of the Mormon Church trace on the case. Blind following. Like, I don't understand why people feel they can't question things. And I can just attest, as someone who grew up in Mormonism, as someone whose entire family was in Mormonism, questioning things was dangerous because it meant the possible separation of you from your entire family system and from your entire social structure and from all of your support systems. So questioning it is costly. And that's the hard part for so many people. And yes, Mary Cat, there are still people who are following Chad Daybell's teachings, still reading his books. And there are people who are still following Lori. In fact, she has her own little cult in prison, as far as I understand, where she's teaching things to her little cohort of prisoners over there. And there are people who are still texting her. Now, I don't place any blame on someone who is texting Lori out of, I guess, entertainment purposes, right? If you don't really buy into what she believes. But if you're one of the people who is texting Lori, allowing her to preach to you, and you give any credence to the things she says, I don't even know what to tell you at this point. It's just crazy. It is a betrayal. Betrayal trauma is a real thing. And it's one of the reasons why ex-Mormons are typically labeled as angry. There's the trope of the angry ex-Mormon. Well, yeah, we're angry because we were betrayed, we were lied to, and years of our lives and thousands of our dollars were stolen from us because of leaders who wanted to stay in position and people who lied to us. So I'm sad to hear this. Ruby's brother has been in therapy with Jodi. Hey, Kresha, how are you? Glad you're here. Another theory to add to the list, there's a network of people who all believe the same way as those who've been convinced that we speak of. Inverted is the best word I have for now. There are more. Yeah, there are plenty of more people. There are plenty of people who still believe the same way as Chad and Lori and Ruby and Jodi. And it's sick. And I don't understand it. And I just want to keep talking about it so that hopefully it's going to wake someone up at some point. They're gonna see something at some point and say, okay, this is wrong. I need to step away. This is the reason I keep talking about it. Yeah, the Noni Juice MLM cult was a product of the early 2000s. And my uncle, okay, more rabbit holes, you guys. So there's my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family, right? My mom's side of the family, 7th generation Mormons, always lived in Utah. One of my uncles on my mom's side of the family is one of the founders of the Tahitian company. I was involved in that company for a short time. And I have stories and I have tea, but it's just not been the right time to talk about any of those things yet, while I am still talking about my dad's side of the family. I don't know how I came out of this with any brain cells left. I'm gonna have to think about that. Yeah. And to Crush's point, it doesn't look good when the leaders of said church are affiliated with the inverted network. Yes. And some of this is the inner business teaching of Mormons do business with other Mormons. This is the Mormon mafia concept. And goofy senior apostles behavior teaching. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by this, but the goofy teaching that the senior apostle is the one who becomes the prophet, if that's what you're talking about, or the goofy senior apostles teaching behavior, I don't know. The whole thing is messed up. We have 80 and 90-year-olds leading a global organization worth $250 billion, and all they can think to do with their money is to buy more land and build more temples that don't have enough people to staff them, instead of feeding the poor and needy and taking care of their own members who are literally starving to death in some situations. I don't get it. Yep. Trace on the case. She was practicing after she lost her license. So after she lost her therapeutic license, she became a coach and then just continued to teach the same exact things without a license. And I realize this is a little bit ironic, me coming to you as a coach who is not licensed in any way whatsoever. So, I get it. The coaching industry is problematic because it's sort of a wild west. You can get licensing from everywhere or nowhere. I looked into a couple of different licensing programs that wanted to charge between $3,000 and $10,000 to become licensed. And then you have to look at the organization that's licensing you. It's not like the state licensing board that licenses therapists, where people can write in complaints and you can have your licensing taken away like Jodi did. So the coaching industry is, vastly unregulated. But yeah, she was practicing after her therapeutic license was removed by the state of Utah. She was just practicing as a coach. So, and Rando, I completely 100% agree with you. I like whiskey way more than I like noni juice. So there's that. Just want to make sure that I don't miss questions. There was the Blaise Thibodeau case that was very similar. The parents were very visions of glory. They believed he was a Davidic messenger. They tried to kidnap him and take him to Canada. Thank goodness he was found alive and safe. It continues. The visions of glory rampage among all of these crazy prepper people continues to perpetuate harmful ideas. Yep. And David Hamlin, another LDS recommended therapist who believes his sperm was the seed of righteousness. Yeah. Crazy. I'm not going to read this one, but I agree with you. Okay. So trace on the case, Jodi's own kids have not spoken publicly as far as I know, but when Jesse did their Mormon Stories interview, they said that Jodi's own children don't speak to her. They are estranged from her. And one of the comments from one of Jodi's children was that the reason they don't speak to her is because if Jodi tried to convince them of anything, they would believe it, no matter how crazy it was. So I don't think they've spoken out, but just the very fact that they are estranged from her and they don't speak from her speaks volumes. I just have to say, if children decide to go no contact with their parents, there's a reason. And we should listen to that reason. Breathing. Yeah, it was an excellent book. It's a great read. Highly recommend. She writes very intelligently. She did have help with her writing, but still just the fact that at 22, being so close to this situation, only having been removed from this for a few years, and to be able to write so eloquently about it is just absolutely stunning. And I'm so grateful that she wrote that book, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Good to see you, young Black economist. Thanks, Joel Roberts. I appreciate your comments. I'm not going to show it, but I appreciate it. I'm sorry, GGB, your city's getting a temple. Hey, if they try to tell you that the steeple height needs to be like 200 feet, definitely fight that stuff. Take a page out of the Book of Fairview, Texas. and realize that a community rallying together can have the power to fight against the Mormon Church. And they should be fought against when they're doing harmful things and when they're trying to bully cities and organizations and governments into having their way. It's just not right. Kresha, you and me. I just remember, I remember when the official word came out, the official press release came out that JJ and Tylee were missing, and I reposted it and immediately got blocked by several family members. I was stunned. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I was like, why? Why would you not want to do everything you possibly could in your power to find these kids? It was just like a mind virus. It was like I couldn't understand it. And at the same time, the most logical explanation just completely blew my mind. And I didn't want to live in a world where it was possible for my own family members to be angry with me for trying to find missing children. I still can't even think about it. Okay, here's what I wish, young Black economist. I wish that the federal government would enact a law that says that if you are a 501c3 church, that you can have your operating expenses, and whatever money you collect beyond your operating expenses, that 51% of that money has to go to caring for your own congregation members when they're in need. For example, providing food, shelter, and clothing for your congregation members who are suffering. 51% at the minimum in order for you to maintain your tax exempt status. That's what I wish. And that the other 49%, I believe, at least half of that should go towards helping the community, because churches exist to serve the community, period. And if they're not serving the community, if all they're doing with their donations and their wealth is saving up for a rainy day or enriching themselves or stockpiling or hoarding or buying up massive tracts of land, they should have to pay taxes on that land. They should have to pay taxes on those investments. That's no longer a church. It's no longer a charitable organization. That's a corporation. I do my best not to curse, but sometimes I can't help myself. Jen Mark, thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here. This is a late night and I appreciate it. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss comments. Oh, rando. I got my mom that same orchid Lego for Christmas. My dad passed this year and she was given a real one at his funeral. Oh, I'm so sorry. Needless to say, it didn't last long, so I got her that one so it'd last. Well, thank you. My son actually also got me this Lego orchid a couple of years ago. And I have the Lego succulents. You guys, I'm a nerd, okay? If I could reach my camera right now, I would pan it over to the side because I have my little Millennium Falcon over here that my son gave me, and I have a Darth Vader castle. I have a Wicked castle over there that I got for Christmas. I'm a Lego nerd, sorry. I just really enjoy it, the tactile sensations of it. And I'm really, really sorry for your loss. Yep. They just don't want to submit the paperwork. Actually, I think it's really that they don't want people to know how much money they have. I think they're scared of that. Mick Spunky, I'm not surprised. By the way, still got room on my calendar for an interview from you. Trace on the case, will you email me about this? Because I'm still investigating all of these crazy little splinter groups. I would really like to know more about it. Yes, I'm really grateful that Blaze was saved. Yeah, there's a temple in Atlanta. And for those of you who don't know, if they build a temple in your area, once the temple is finished being built, you can go tour the temple before it gets officially dedicated. So you can go and see all of the pretty things inside. And it is totally prime real estate. Like this is what the LDS churches, their priorities are prime real estate, excellent investments, $50 million temples. And whenever they renovate one of those temples, do you know what they do with the furniture inside the temples? They literally just throw it away. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of furniture. It's ridiculous. Trace, I'm here with you. I've been very low contact for a long time. So I just want to give my support and solidarity to you. Sometimes it's necessary. Oh, Shannon, I'm so sorry. It's a tragedy to me. Like $50 million, build a homeless shelter, build a soup kitchen, like take care of your starving children. It just infuriates me. Breathing. Yeah, this is an interesting comment, Garrick. The more you take out of a person, the more they depend on the model ruling over them. I was thinking earlier today about some of the horrible things that Ruby's children had to go through and some of the horrible things that I went through. And when you convince a child that they are bad or evil or worthless, it doesn't take very long for that child to give up on happiness and for them to give up on the possibility of having a happy life. And that's one of the reasons why when those children were found in Jodi's house, that the girl especially, it took her 4 hours to accept help, to accept food, to accept going to the hospital. It was heartbreaking to see she had already given up at that young age. And I unfortunately totally identify with it. It's that Stockholm syndrome where the person abusing you, you become dependent upon them. And it is incredibly psychologically damaging and very, very difficult to get over. And it takes a really long time. So I'm so sad for those kids. And I don't want it to happen to anyone else. That's the whole reason why we're talking about this, right? Like, please, can we stop so it doesn't happen to anyone else? Yeah. By the way, the Amish have some of the highest rates of sexual abuse of any community in the entire world. It just goes untalked about because they're so isolated. And yeah, Kresha, we've talked about this before, but the church didn't say anything about the kids when they went missing. And they did. They spoke up a lot when Elizabeth Smart went missing. They allowed Elizabeth Smart's family to have an entire platform on all of their media channels to ask for the return of Elizabeth Smart. The wealth and the power had something to do with it, but why? Why are we not highlighting any children who go missing? Any children who are, from faithful LDS families? Like, if you are a church that bears the name of Jesus Christ, don't you think that Jesus Christ would want children to be found and to be helped, regardless of their denomination? But even your own people, if you claim to represent Jesus Christ, please prioritize the health and well-being of your children above everything else. Still makes me angry. Somewhat agree. Can't totally 100% agree, but somewhat, like mostly agree. This is ridiculous, MB. I'm so sorry about this. My aunt was very poor, didn't have a death plan, was homebound, was a faithful member, asked for help with funeral arrangements, told us no because she wasn't active, found out tithing, was on auto withdrawal. This is an organization that does not care about people. I agree with you, young Black economist. Tax the churches. The end. Joel, I want to understand more about what you're saying here. The church was asking for donations into the humanitarian fund to support the people of Los Angeles while asking for and demanding help to take down Christmas lights at the temple. What? Okay. So, Joel, to answer your question, I have a plan to go to Salt Lake during General Conference, although it's probably not going to happen right during General Conference because that's right when Lori's trial is going to start. But I thought it would be a great idea to go and to give to the homeless population that's literally right in the center of Salt Lake City, hanging out at Jesus's mall that the church paid millions of dollars for, while they are across the street holding their meetings. There are homeless people sitting there starving and freezing. And I thought it would be a great idea to go and help the homeless people while they were having their meetings. Church of Korihor beat me to it. He's been out giving blankets to the unhoused during this really cold winter. And so if you have money to donate right now, like I will always accept donations. This is what I do for a living. But at this moment in particular, I'm going to ask you to go to churchofkorihor.org and donate your money to that organization so that he can continue to give blankets and food to the unhoused during the cold Salt Lake winter right now. If you go on YouTube and look for at Hellfire Agency, that's where the Church of Korihor is. That's where their channel is. Please go subscribe to the channel and please go and donate to churchofkorihor.org. They are doing real work and making real change in a place where I would love to do it, but I'm not there right now. I'm not capable of doing that right now. So Joel and anyone else who has financial means, Exmo Joe is out there actually helping real people. He has a beautiful video on his channel of them helping the unhoused people in Salt Lake. So if you are able tonight, I just would ask your donations go there because I would love to see more of that happening. Sorry. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'll try to do that. I'll put that on my list. It's going to be on my list behind some of the Star Wars sets and some of the Harry Potter sets. I've had my eye on the what do you call it? The word just left my brain right now. The Hogsmeade set, the Diagon Alley set. Those are the two that I've had my eye on lately. But I'll put it on my list. It sounds fun. Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to Scientology. And Joel, I have to be, I'm ashamed to admit that with all of the years that I was physically in the church, but mentally out, where I was just kind of trying to make it work for my kids and trying to go through the motions, tithing was the last thing to go for me, oddly enough. Lots of other things went before that. But for whatever reason, maybe it was just scarcity mentality. I was afraid to stop paying my tithing. But I was really grateful when I did, because now I can give money to organizations that actually benefit human beings instead of benefiting themselves. So thank you for sharing this, Colby Kistner. Reading about trauma and generational curses that ex-Mormons went through paralleled the generational trauma on my Vietnamese side of the family in many ways because of the religious part. Thank you so much for sharing that. Generational trauma is a real thing. Okay, so I'm just trying to get to I'm only 3 generations removed from polygamy. And how many generations am I? 1, 2, 3, I guess 4 generations removed from polygamy, but I'm a 7th generation Mormon. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here and for supporting. I really just wanted to call attention to the fact that Jodi Hildebrandt is being sued by another former client, and his allegations fall in line with all of the other complaints that I have seen about Jodi's modus operandi, basically the way that she runs her business, fraud, deception, abuse, and really still harming people. So I want to make sure that people understand that these things are still going on. And I want to make sure that we call attention to these things, because it's not over. It didn't end, unfortunately, with the deaths of my cousins, these children. It's still going on. The harm is still being perpetuated by the stupid book of Visions of Glory, by Tom Harrison, by everybody who ever listened to him, by Jodi Hildebrandt and all of her podcasts that are still out there, by anybody who still believes in these things, these ideas, or these organizations. It's still going on, and it needs to stop. And yes, MB, I would love to have a beautiful human gathering. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. I would love that. Being in person with other beautiful humans would be amazing. Yeah, and Tim Ballard is part of that as well. There are just so many people who are involved in it. So anyway, I just want to say I am going to continue to research this lawsuit to make sure that the source is credible. I want to look into the person who's bringing the lawsuit. I want to look into ConneXions and see if they're still active. If they are, then we need to go full court press on this and shut it down. Because anybody who is still teaching the harmful things that led to the horrible, horrific abuse of children needs to stop. I'm going to continue to always call attention to anything that brings harm to the innocent, to the marginalized, to anybody who is on the wrong side of a power differential. I appreciate you being here and supporting the channel. Please subscribe. Please like. It guarantees that I get to continue making content like this. That's important. And if you have questions or suggestions or other things that you think I should be talking about, please email me at askmegan@gmail.com with 2 E's, askmegan@gmail.com. As soon as I have an update for you, I will give it. I'm working on an episode of comparing how Lori Vallow and Jodi Hildebrandt are very similar, looking more into the things that Sherry Franke detailed in her book, and doing an entire series on basically identifying the things about ourselves that we don't like and learning to heal those things so that we then don't go and perpetuate abuse onto other people. If you would like to support the channel, and I hope that you want to, the best free way to support the channel is to subscribe to it and like the episode and share the episode. If you're able to financially support, I have a Venmo, I have a Cash App, and I have my live bully proof course that is happening right now, where I'm teaching people how to recognize and defend against manipulative and controlling people. It is mental self-defense. And you can email me at askmegan@gmail.com, and I will send you all the information, the registration links. There is a live online community where you can meet with other people who are experiencing the same type of bullying behavior and support each other in this journey of learning how to defend against it and how to make our lives more peaceful. So that's another good way to support the channel. Many, many good things are coming up with more ways to support and more specific members only content that's going to include me performing some musical numbers, teaching you how to cook some of my favorite recipes, and just engaging with me on a different level than I'm willing to put out here on YouTube. So please stay tuned for that. It's coming in just the next couple of days. If you hit notifications, then you'll be sure to know whenever I go live and when I'm going to make those members only announcements. Thank you so much for being here. Please take care of each other, but most of all, take care of yourselves. And tonight especially, I'm just going to ask, take care of the children that you know that are in need of a little extra love and affection. Go hug your babies, and I'll see you again soon.